Hi friends and welcome to another video. Today I'm bringing you some more thriller horror reviews slash recommendations or non-recommendations if I don't like the book. I just love doing these videos. One, I love reading horror and reading thriller, and I also love bringing you my thoughts and potentially steering you towards a new favourite book. So today on the docket we have one horror book and three thriller books, but one is kind of like a novella. So let's get into the first book I'm going to talk about today, which is All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. Now, I am a listener of Crime Junkie, so I had to tell myself going into this to not be biased because I'm used to Ashley Flowers telling me a story and they're normally factual stories, but I needed to remind myself that this is fiction and it's not what I'm used to from this, author now, podcaster. So I went in with lowered expectations because I didn't want to over expect and then be under delivered. So in this, we follow Margot, who is going back to her hometown, Wasaruka, uh, Wakarusa, sorry, Indiana, and she is going to look after her ailing uncle, and she stumbles upon an open case. There is a child named Natalie who is found murdered. I can't remember if it was missing, then murdered, or murdered, but this brings up the incident that happened back in 1997, 1994. And in 1994, there was January Jacobs, who was found dead in her home, and you follow the investigation kind of in dual timelines. So you have 1994, where you are getting to hear from Chrissy, January Jacobs' mum, about like what happened, what has been happening since January's death. And then you follow 2019 Margot, who is not only looking into the murder of Natalie, but is also now looking into the murder of January to see if there's any connections. Now, I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 3.5. I wish I enjoyed this more. And the thing is about this is that I feel the reason I didn't enjoy it more is because it felt predictable. It felt like we went in a circle to get to the same place. So, there is a couple of suspects that come up throughout this story, and I immediately latched onto one and, it circled back. I was latched onto one fairly early, and then when we got to the end, it felt like I had came full circle to my original, inclination of what happened. Now, there was like a secondary twist to this, and my original inclination wasn't spot on, but it was close enough that I feel like this book became predictable for me. I liked the way the book was written. I can be kind of fussy with dual timelines because I think if they're not done well, they can come across as clunky and fragmented. But in this one, it was smooth. It was done really well. Chrissy and Margot had distinctive, I wouldn't say overly distinctive, like narrative styles, but I could definitely tell when I was reading from Chrissy to Margot, and not just because the like settings of time were different, but because their personalities were so different and their your ages and their places in life were so different. So I think the characters were well written because you feel for Luke, who is Margot's uncle, and he is going through dementia, and I just think that is one of the worst things in the world. So there was really a tugging on the heartstrings in that situation. And then you follow Margot, who is part of the town, but then is an outsider and comes back to the town. So you're kind of like looking through the eyes of an outsider that has insider information. And then you have Chrissy, who is essentially part of the town from her childhood until she has children. So it's very interestingly told through these characters, and you do feel things for them. I wish that we got more time in Chrissy's perspective with her children. I wish that that was built up a bit more. It would have had a more emotional impact. It would have felt like you really got to know Chrissy and January while she was alive. And I think if we had that, the revelations later on in the book would have hit a little harder. and it would have just felt more emotional. The plot to this kind of felt a little simplistic for me. I don't mind a simplistic thriller. I just think there has to be other elevated elements of a simplistic thriller to make it good. I don't mind, guilty pleasure, easy to read, fast paced, fun beach read thrillers. It's part of the reason why I fell in love with thrillers, because I am really interested in psychology and the human mind and what makes people behave out of societal norms, what makes people behave in such a, depraving manner. So I do love a good thriller that's just, one and done, flip the page, over and done with, twisted story, great. Whereas this kind of fell into that camp where I thought it was trying to be more elevated than your beach read thriller, but it wasn't given enough to do that. I think that I read, oh my goodness, S.A. Cosby's All Sinners Bleed. I read that last year for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I think that something like that, it's a plot that I've read before, it's a plot that I know well, but it was done so well that it elevated everything about a plot that I had read before. And this unfortunately didn't do that. It was predictable. I was maybe shocked with one or two revelations I was a little shocked at. There's like a Chrissy moment that I was a bit like, oh, I didn't see that coming, and there was little things here and there that I was like, oh, that's a good reveal. I like that. But overall, like the overarching plot of this just felt predictable, which is unfortunate. I do think that if Ashley Flowers wrote another book, I would read it because I would definitely give her a second chance. It's a 3.5. It's better than middle of the road, but it just was missing that, that thing that makes a thriller go from something you've read before, something you can predict, to something that is like mind blowing. And it just missed that mark, unfortunately. I did enjoy this. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I finally picked up Ashley Flowers' books. Unfortunately, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Next year, I have Birdbox by Josh Malerman. Now, probably everyone has read this or watched the movie. I had done neither because when the movie came out, I avoided it because I wanted to read the book first. I actually got this second hand. I think this cost me like £2, which is really nice because I will be on haul in this. I gave it 3 stars, and I gave myself the goal at the start of the year that if I read a book from my shelves and I give it 3 stars, then it gets automatically unhauled because I don't have room on my shelf for 3-star reads that I'm never going to pick up again. So this will be getting unhauled. Even though I enjoyed it, I would return to the movie if I wanted to like relive this world. So essentially in this we follow Mallory, and the world has went chaotic because there are these things that if you look at them, you lose your mind and either hurt yourself or hurt others. So you follow Mallory, who is pregnant and living with her sister, and when her sister sees something and takes her own life, Mallory finds the newspaper that there was an advertisement saying if you want a safe space to land, come here. She then enters this house with a bunch of different characters and they try to survive this apocalyptic world. Now, this was so interestingly told because it's third person, which I didn't expect. I expected it to be first person through Mallory's mind. Like, I mean, it makes sense doing it third person, but if you were going to do this third person like it is done, then I wish we got other characters more included in this instead of Mallory, because I expected to go into this as first person through Mallory's eyes, but it and seeing her, like seeing the characters through her eyes, but we go in third person, so we see the character as like, a spectral being instead of in the eyes of some like another character. And I just think that I would have either enjoyed this more if it was first person, or I would have enjoyed this more if it was third person, but the other characters in the house got more time to shine. Because you have this house of people that are all different characters, all different ages, and it's dysfunctional, especially when you add in the end of the world vibes that this book has. I wanted to see more of the dysfunction. I wanted to really get into the mind and the psychology of these people stuck in this situation. And I don't think this book done that from being third person, but still through Mallory's, following Mallory. I don't know. I hope this makes sense. So the world in this is great. I really enjoyed the monsters, angels, demons, entities, whatever you want to call what is doing this to people. I enjoyed that you didn't know what they were. They didn't have a name, they didn't have, a makeup, they didn't have anything that you could pinpoint and say this is what they are. They were just there. And it made this book so much more scarier because you didn't know what you were scared of. And in a situation like this, I would be dead in like 5 seconds because I am not functional at the best of times, never mind end of the world times. So I did enjoy this and I enjoyed the world. I just wanted more from the characters. I wanted more from the dysfunction of the group. And also, I would have liked just a little bit at the end with a little bit more explanation on Mallory after the events of the book. I think that if we, just settled that a little bit longer in the ending, we could have had a bit more, revelations. I also think this book could have been scarier. Again, I go back to if it was first person perspective, I think this book would have been really scary. And I think we could have really amped up the horrors of what they are going through. And the fact that two young kids are also at the center of this, I didn't really feel like it made much of an impact having them the way they were. I think that Mallory's disattachment to these kids kind of came across for the reader not to care as much as they should, which sounds really bad, but we're in a fictional world, so who cares? So yeah, I just think that this book done things that I am really impressed by. I love the, end of the world. I love the apocalyptic nature. I really enjoyed the fact that we didn't know what we were fighting. I just think there was, the narration style and the writing style and the choices just didn't line up to make me scared or empathetic. Well, I was empathetic. More empathetic maybe. I just wanted more and I didn't get it. So this is going to be a 3 star and I'm now unhauling this. So I will probably be taking an unhaul video out very shortly. I don't know where my notes are, but I think maybe June I will be doing a clear out. So this will be in that video. So if you're interested in seeing what I unhaul from January till that video, then subscribe and hit the bell because I will be getting rid of some of the books that I don't need or have interest in anymore. And this is going to be one of them. Next here we have The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. Now, if you haven't watched my last thriller horror or my best and worst books of 2022, no, 2023, because we're in 2024, Shannon. If you haven't watched any of them, I will leave them linked down below. But I talked about Saving Noah from this author. I hated it. I despised it. I would burn that book easily. And I don't think you should burn books, but I would burn that book. I hate it. I hate it so much. But I decided to give the author a second chance because sometimes things just don't click with every book you read from an author. Sometimes you can have a favorite from an author, and then the next time it could be a flop. It's just the joys of what story they decide to write and how you decide to, resonate, like how much it resonates with you. So The Perfect Child follows Christopher and Hannah, and they live like a picture perfect life. He's a surgeon, she's a nurse. They have like this white picket fence life. The only thing that's missing is a child because Hannah can't conceive. And this has not changed their life. They're looking at fostering, adopting. There is other things that you can do to bring a child into your life. But one day when they are at work, there is a toddler that is found in a very neglected situation. She is brought in. She's called Janie, and she looks to be a toddler, but she's 6, and she is in a very bad way, broken bones, malnourished. She's not. She's not doing good. And Christopher is her surgeon who repairs her bones. And he creates this bond with her and wants to introduce Hannah. And that eventually happens. And together they decide that they want to foster her, and then that then leads to adoption. But the thing is Janie is perfect with Christopher, perfect little girl essentially. But she started to freeze Hannah out, and she started to make Hannah feel really uncomfortable. Hannah's feeling like she's struggling a lot, and the dynamic changes when Janie moves into their house, and Hannah starts feeling like she has no control of her life. I gave this a 3 star, and the next book I'm going to talk about is the novella to this book. It's a sequel novella. So if you haven't read this book, then you probably want to skip me talking about the novella. But I'm going to include that in this so that I can get like a well-rounded review of this 2 books. What I liked about this was the characters were well written, because every character in this did feel, very different from each other. Hannah and Christopher felt different from each other. Janie felt different from Hannah's sister's kids. The psychologist felt different from Hannah. The social worker, like, all of them had very well descriptive, lively characteristics. And I really enjoyed that. The author, Lucinda Berry, did really write these characters well. The thing is about this book was essentially you have to believe that Janie is sinister. And I find it really, really hard to be scared of a 6 year old. And I just don't. Maybe if Janie was aged up, I would be scared. But all these things that happen through this novel just become unbelievable to me from a 6 year old. Like, I wouldn't be scared of a 6 year old. I wouldn't be, threatened by a 6 year old. So to make Janie the kind of villain of this story in Hannah's eyes was hard to get on board with, because, Hannah's experiencing all these things, but you're not quite sure if Hannah is having a break from, like, her in her brain, or if, like, what is the events are actually happening. So it's kind of unreliable in a sense, because you get Hannah and Christopher's chapters separately, and they both have very different experiences. So there is that element that's done well, where you're not quite sure if Hannah is just, you know, not in her right mind, or if Janie is actually doing these things. But again, I find it really hard to get on board with the fact a 6 year old being sinister, scary, and doing anything with nefarious intent. I don't think she would be going out here. Like, I don't think this might not be given enough credit to 6 year olds, but I don't think a 6 year old can do something specifically in these scenarios with the intent to harm. There is some things that they can do. 6 year olds know right and wrong, but the things in this are just a little bit too advanced for me to believe that they would be done intentionally, which was why I didn't really enjoy this book, because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that this 6 year old could be doing anything that any of these situations called for. And that took a big part of this book, to make it unbelievable for me. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. And there is elements, I will say, the twists in this book. So there was one twist I didn't see coming, and there was two that I predicted. So overall, I gave this a 3 star, and I gave it a 3 star because I liked the way the characters were written. I liked how the author made Hannah seem unreliable, and you didn't know what to trust. But I just couldn't give it higher than that, considering I kind of felt like it was ridiculous. I hope I'm not alone in that. If you've read this, let me know in the comments if you agree with me, or even if you don't, let me know, because I would be interested in your take on this. I think it was written well, but it just wasn't believable. And that's the real issue that I had with this. Will I give Lucinda Berry a second, third chance now? Potentially. I don't know. I mean, I've had a book that I've hated, and I've had a book that I've thought was middle of the road. So my thought process is that if I give this author a third chance, it might potentially be, oh, great, and I found something that I like from this author, or it could potentially be, hate it, middle of the road, don't want to read anymore. So I think I may give this author a third chance. And it helps that these are on Kindle Unlimited. So, girl math, they're free. It's not like I'm going to be spending my money to read these. Well, in roundabout terms because I pay for Kindle Unlimited anyway. So it's not like I would be spending money to read these. It would be like I would be, I'm picking them up because they're convenient. Would I give this author a third chance if they weren't available on Kindle Unlimited? No. But because they are, I believe that I could do that. And then it also means that it will be like my tiebreaker. If it's great, then I'll continue picking up this author's work. If it's shit and I hate it, I won't pick up any more of this author's work. Same with if it's middle of the road. If it's middle of the road, then I probably would just call it a day. But I technically did give her a third chance, actually, thinking about it now, because I've read An Unwelcome Reunion. So if you haven't read The Perfect Child and don't want to be spoiled, please just stop this video here. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. I just want to review the novella sequel because I feel like it leaves it unfinished if I don't. I don't really count this as a third chance because it was kind of like a spin off novella instead of a full length novel. I gave this 3 stars also. And it essentially follows Janie, who comes out of a rehabilitation center, like juvie, I think, because of her age, at 18, and she writes her memoir and becomes, famous. She essentially says that she was neglected from Chris and Hannah, her mom, and that, and it was kind of, turning it on its head, everything that happened in the first book. So at the end of The Perfect Child, there was Hannah's sister ended up dead because Janie supposedly like pushed her down the stairs. And then there was the video of Janie getting treated like shit from her mom and then killing her mom. So essentially Janie is a killer when we open up in this novella. And again, 6-year-old color, I'm not quite convinced, but it's fine. So I go on and I read this novella, and I did enjoy this probably slightly more than The Perfect Child. I'd probably give the novella a 3.25, um, because it was fast and entertaining, and it closed some gaps that I felt were missing from The Perfect Child. Like, we get told about how Janie went on not only to continue to hurt people, which is more believable when she is 16 in a juvenile detention center gluing her roommate's eyes shut. Like, it's more believable for me at that age. But I don't know if that's like a wrong or a right opinion. It's just my opinion. So you go on and you see Janie as she's trying to get a second chance and rediscover herself and rebuild her image as not this terrible child that is a killer. And you don't quite believe it because the social worker, who is very prominent in The Perfect Child, does research, and she is still doing very nasty things all the way through her childhood to her young adultness. So she is like, she is quite a bad person, even, as an adult. And you follow Chrissy and no, not Chrissy, and you follow Hannah and Christopher as they, you know, start to look into. She goes on a talk show and she pretty much says that they were neglectful, and their nephew Jacob, something like that, goes on and says like, "Why did you treat me this way to Janie?" And they had no idea about some of the things that he was saying, and Janie had divulged information. Also, Christopher is, he never quite believed that Janie was capable of the things that happened in The Perfect Child. So he is in denial, still in denial about her being evil, essentially. But Hannah is completely convinced that she is like the devil incarnate. In The Perfect Child, Hannah tries to kill Janie because she thinks that Janie is trying to kill her son, because she does end up pregnant, which adds another layer of, stress on the mind and the body, and another layer of Hannah being, you know, unreliable. So she has already tried to kill Janie, and she believes that she is the devil incarnate and that she will come after her family. So Hannah takes it upon herself to end her life, and she does. But she doesn't go to jail because the social worker swoops in and says she's going to take the blame and do the time because Hannah has a family. Now, I didn't I didn't like that the social worker, Piper, took the fall for it, because I just don't believe that someone would take the fall for murder of their client. Like, I don't believe a social worker would see someone like their client murder in cold blood and be like, "Yeah, oh fear, I'll do the time." It just, again, it's just these like unbelievable things that make me think no. Like, I would rather have a predictable thriller that is believable and convicting than have a thriller that is unbelievable, because it just doesn't make sense to me. And like, it does not make sense to me that a social worker would take the fall for murder. And I think that's why, like, I think I like this one more than The Perfect Child, simply because it wrapped things up. It gave me more of a closure feeling than The Perfect Child did. I just, like, I couldn't give this anymore, because again, it had that unbelievable element that just didn't sit well with me. And I was a bit like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure. If that's what you want to sell me, I ain't bloody buying it, but I did. But yeah, so it was an entertaining time with these books. I think that if I was to recommend any, I would probably recommend All Good People Here. That's probably it, to be honest. Bird Box I find hard. I would recommend the Bird Box movie, but I think if you've watched the movie, you don't have to read the book. Normally the book gives more of like a background, um, you know, more information, more descriptive information, but I don't think the book gave that to me. So I think that I would recommend All Good People Here. I would recommend the movie to Bird Box over the Bird Box book. And if you've watched the movie, I don't think you need to read the book. And I would not recommend The Perfect Child and A Welcome Reunion, because they just didn't do it for me. I mean, if you can believe that a 6 year old is evil, then you might enjoy this more than I did. But yeah, just wasn't for me. So I have one recommendation from this video, and it's not even a glowing recommendation, because I did only give it a 3.5 stars. So go in with lower expectations if you pick this up on my recommendation. I feel bad when it turns into a video where I'm reviewing things and I have nothing to recommend to you. But this is the way that it goes. Some things hit and some things don't. And if I can steer you clear of something that's not worth your time, great. If I can recommend you a book that you end up loving, fabulous, even better. But yeah, this was just one of those where I read these books and just didn't vibe as much as I wish I had. But I will be bringing out more of these, so if you're interested in more thriller horror reviews, then subscribe and hit the bell and you will be notified. I do plan on taking these out regularly and just recommending and reviewing and just having a catch up with you all, letting you know what I'm reading and how I'm feeling about what I read. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, great week, great weekend, whenever the hell you're watching this. Remember to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
So far, it's been so hard to live, but lately something in me changed.